Welcome to the MLB Network Podcast. This episode is presented by New Balance. We got now. Dan Plesac, Matt Vasgersian, opening day in Major League Baseball, despite the Japan opener, of course, tomorrow, March 27th, Thursday. Yeah. So it's perfect that you and I are doing this together to talk about opening day, because for both of us, about a decade apart, our first opening days were as employees of the Milwaukee Brewers. Yeah, you as an all-star closer, me as a TV announcer. Here we go.
I found out I made the team on Friday. Saturday, the team left to go to Arizona. And all I remember when I found out I made the team Saturday, Friday night, I think the word got out I made the team. And Danny Darwin, Pete Vukovich, they made me go out with them.
Well, that's some
in
group.
Old Town Scottsdale. Oh, man. It was some rough sledding Saturday morning getting on that plane.
You went out with Dr. Death and Vuk before your first opening day?
I didn't have any idea. I grew up in the Midwest. I didn't know what a shot of tequila was.
So now the Milwaukee part of it, I guess, is where we should start, right? Because what a place to get your feet wet as a major league pitcher. I know your first opening day in '86 was on the road at Comiskey, but then in '87, opening day was at home. And that was the first time you'd opened a schedule at home as a big leaguer.
Yeah, and the crazy part about it, right, you spend spring training in Florida, Arizona. Brewers then were in Arizona. It's warm, you get to Milwaukee, and all of a sudden it's like cold, and you get up the day of the game. You have to be at the ballpark at like 10 o'clock for a 1 o'clock game. I came out of my apartment, and I was like, man, snow flurries, really kind of overcast, cold, miserable day. You pull into the parking lot at Old County Stadium, and it's packed. They're tailgating like it's a Packer game.
Yeah.
Like guys with shirts off, they've got the grills going, you walk in. I had never seen anything like it.
Oh, the cheesers there and the opening day and
yeah, and I remember in the first inning, it was really gray and it was like snow flurries. And when the flurries came down, it was like you were at a Packer game. They were going nuts.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
So 10 years later, I would experience my first opening day at that wonderful, awesome, antiquated, beer-stenched facility. At this, in fact, the new ballpark was being built.
Look at you and Rock there.
Yeah, look at me. What was I after there with the goat? My God, like a poor man's Rich Aurelia. So that first opening day, I'm working in the big leagues, right? And I'm so excited. And opening day, home opener of '97, it's in the 30s, right? I remember pulling up in the bus from spring training, and Cal Eldred turns behind him to tell anybody who wanted to listen, anybody have any questions why I blew out? Because to your point, you're going from the warmth of spring training to 30-degree temperatures like that.
It's so hard on pitchers. I think it's hard on everybody, but you're so used to warming up. You get a sweat going in Arizona, and you get to the ballpark that first day. You're stretching on the field. The shade there from County Stadium, half the field was covered in shade. So all the guys where the sun would be cracking there by the first base batter's box, everybody's trying to stretch where the sun is. It's brutal.
So this one in '97, it's in the 30s. Rangers are in town. And they decide, this is back in the day when they'd do a baseball giveaway and they'd hand it to people as they were entering the building. To your point, what you just established, Milwaukee's got a long distinguished culture of beer consumption on your way into the ballpark. So you hand 40,000 fans a souvenir baseball. Where do you think those baseballs are going to end up? They were chucking baseballs, and Phil Garner had to get on the microphone and say, "Do not throw the baseballs onto the field. We will have to forfeit the game." So you had that. You also had a water main burst underneath one of the overhangs. So about 100-plus people got showered with ice-cold water, which when it hit the ground froze. It was that cold.
Yeah.
You imagine you're drunk out of your mind. You're at a Brewers game. They gave you a free baseball to throw on the field, and now you're soaking wet and freezing.
You know what I'd love today? To take today's players and have them be a player on the Brewers in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. The clubhouse was small. The batting cage was non-existent. There was nowhere to throw. There was nothing covered if you wanted to play catch. I remember there were days when it rained early on in the year. We would play catch in the corridors of the second deck because the roof was high enough. We would play catch on top, covered under the second deck. I'm not kidding.
119 arrests, by the way, on opening day at
Oh, I
County
can believe
Stadium
that.
in '97. So give me some of your other opening day memories, because you've been through a lot of them here. By the way, Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, worst opening day.
And was that your year?
Yeah, that was the first time I had a home opener as a major league announcer. I'm like, this is what this is like?
Really?
Holy cow.
So
It was pretty awesome,
They threw you
actually.
right into the fire. I can remember my first one. I grew up a White Sox fan, and I went to spring training in 1986. I was the longest shot to make that team. Had pitched in Double-A El Paso. I was happy to go to big league camp, find out I make the team, and we opened the season at Old Comiskey Park against the White Sox. And all I remember is I came into the clubhouse and the equipment guy, Tony Migliaccio, and I'm looking for my locker, and I see my locker next to Danny Darwin's. And I don't know how to tell Tony Migliaccio, but my name was spelled Pleasac. And so I was like, do I say anything? So I put the jersey on during BP, and when I came back, I said, hey, Tony, my name is spelled wrong. It's Plesac. There's no A after the E. So they had to make sure that they got somebody to come in there and to sew the correct name on the back of my jersey.
Oh, that was your first?
That was my first day in the big leagues.
God,
And
like-
I could remember too, like growing up, I was a Chicago sports fan. The Bears had just won the Super Bowl. They beat the Patriots, and Mike Ditka threw out the first pitch. And I felt like, Matt, like for you with the Oakland A's, you're fitting to Northern California, he was wearing the headband, you know, the Jim McMahon made this signature thing. And I remember just thinking like I had died and gone to heaven. Like not only am I in the big leagues, but I'm at Comiskey Park, Mike Ditka throwing out the first pitch. It was like the greatest day of my life.
You don't remember all of them, do you? I mean, you
No.
can't possibly remember every opening day.
No, I remember that one, and I remember my second one in 1987. It was cold, it was dreary, and you're in the dugout, right? And they're doing the introduction, so everybody gets lined up in numerical order, right? And the PR director, Tom Skybosh, he would make sure that you were lined up. So I figured, I knew I had to follow number 36 because I was number 37. So you're waiting there, and it's loud. They're doing the introductions, and the Red Sox were already out on the foul line, all the Red Sox players. And they called my name, and I couldn't hear, and Tom Skybosh goes, go! And like your biggest fear, I hit the top step, do a header. Completely face plant. So now you're in the all-home whites, right? So both of my knees are covered with like orange gravel. I scraped both of my hands on the warning track. And I remember standing on the foul line, and I don't want to make eye contact because you're looking right at the Red Sox. They're on that foul line. So they're on the third base line, we're on the first base line. And I get there and I turn around and I see Roger Clemens, who I had played summer ball with in Hutchinson, Kansas. He can't even keep a straight face laughing. And all I remember, I was so embarrassed. I remember Bruce Hurst making eye contact with me, looking at me like going, what the hell's wrong with this guy? Hey, and the best part of the story is, this is the day and age where you had one set of home whites. There weren't like three sets of uniforms like now. So I had to wear that uniform. I pitched in that game, and I remember taking my warm-ups thinking, all the guys on the Red Sox are going, look at that guy, man. Look at his knees. He's got dirt on the knees of his pants. It was the most humiliating opening day ever.
You're pitching to Jim Rice and Dewey Evans,
Yes.
and you've fallen on the warning track.
Yeah, it looked like I did a Pete Rose head-first slide into
Excellent.
third base.
Much more to get to here as we celebrate opening day with Dan Plesac, Matt Vasgersian. More opening day memories. There's the young left-hander.
There he is, the good old days.
Oh, yeah. Oh, dotting it.
Oh, that was the older days there with the Phillies.
More MLB Network podcast right after this. Welcome back to the MLB Network Podcast. This episode's presented by New Balance. We got now, and worn by players like Michael Harris to meet the demand of elite ball players. The New Balance Fuel Cell 4040 V7 is a versatile cleat. The 4040 V7 is built for the athlete who needs responsiveness and the ability to cut and run at full speed. The model features a fuel cell foam underfoot and a synthetic and mesh upper to provide breathability, comfort, and a snug fit as you round the bases. The fuel cell midsole features nitrogen-infused foam specifically designed to propel athletes forward. Learn more, purchase the 4040 at newbalance.com. With Dan Plesac, who went through a lot of opening day ceremonies in his career, we talked a little bit about your first memories. What about the last one? Do you remember your final opening day?
2003 at the Vet. I was playing for the Phillies, and I knew that was going to be my last year. Like the last 3 or 4 years I played, Matt, it was like, do I want to do this one more year? And I got traded to the Phillies in May of 2002. Got to the offseason, they pick up my option, and I was just mentally and physically like, okay, this is going to be it. And with the exception of the first one at Old Comiskey Park in 1986, I wanted to take everything in 2003. I mean, the Vet was it was one of those cookie cutter venues like Riverfront and Three Rivers, but passionate fan base. I mean, as passionate. And I remember I'd been in the American League with Milwaukee. The Brewers were then in the American League from 86 to 92. My first year with the Cubs, we were the Phillies home opener in 1993. And I remember the PA announcer, Dan Baker, who I think is the best in the business, standing in a tuxedo, and I'm in a Cub uniform, and he had that great voice. Today's National League game between the Cubs and the Phillies.
That's great, yeah.
And so I remember standing there on the foul line and just like taking it all in, like looking at this monstrous ballpark. And there's just something about the East Coast that's just different, man. I mean, when Dan Baker came out to do the introductions in the national anthem and they had to fly over, guy came in, with one of those things and flew into the field and stuck the landing, the place was going nuts. It was a different opening day than any other opening. I'm not sure if it was because it was my last one, but it was my first real experience to that kind of East Coast culture of like the opener, man.
And you had some perspective at that point in your life too, right? Having been through so many of them. And to your point on East Coast openers, another thing you get, of course, is the terrible weather in late March, early April. We've talked about Milwaukee, right? Cold home openers, especially before Miller Park, American Family Field. How about when Exhibition Stadium was the home of the Blue Jays? Before you got there, 77, first ever home opener for the franchise. Right, this is their maiden voyage, and there was snow on the field 5 hours before game time. It was in the early 30s, the low 30s. This is such great video from Exhibition Stadium. Doug Alt hits a homer, and he was the hero, and Doug Alt would hit about only a dozen or so more in his entire career, but he will forever be known as the guy that hit the first homer in a home game for the Toronto Blue Jays.
I'm going to tell you, we are very familiar with Milwaukee. There was not a colder place to play baseball than Exhibition Stadium, right on the bank of Lake Ontario. The bullpens, it was really dark behind right field. So the seats only went to about center field because that ballpark was initially built for the Argonauts to play football in. So they turned a football venue into a baseball field. And so if you hit a home run to right field, remember famously when Dave Righetti gave up a homer and he threw the ball out into the darkness in right field?
Yeah.
And that was the coldest place ever. Matt, the bullpens were down the right field foul line, and that wind would whip around. And I wasn't a coffee drinker. I was a hot chocolate drinker. And there were days sitting down in that bullpen, it felt like it was the dead of winter. Coldest ballpark I've ever been in, not even close.
I love how, and in Minnesota, among places, I think they're the first to do it. They have the 3 dispensers in the bullpen.
Yes.
They've got hot chocolate, hot coffee, soup.
Yes.
So you just take whatever you want for those cold openers.
That's exactly
it's so good.
There's the coldest place ever.
So let's talk about some of these superlative performances on opening days. And I know you had a pretty good seat. This is the one we always go to, right? We go to Tuffy Rhodes, Carl Tuffy Rhodes, 3 homers against the best in the world at the time, Doc Gooden, on opening day.
Yeah, and the Cubs had taken a flyer on him. He had been playing over in Korea. And we really didn't know much about Tuffy Rhodes. And he hit the first home run, and we were like, wow, just took Dwight Gooden deep. He hit the second home run, and when he came up and he hit the third home run, I remember the Friendly Confines was going nuts. Like, can this guy possibly hit 3 home runs in one day? And it wasn't a great weather day. It wasn't like the wind was blowing out at Wrigley, like one of those days, you get one of those July, August days where the wind's howling. Yeah. It was an incredible performance.
Yeah, and, Harry was Mike's side for it, too, which
absolutely.
made it even better. Their team performances, too, to hit on when you talk about, records and firsts. The Padres in 87, they go down, they're at Jack Murphy Stadium for the home opener. They go down 2-0, bottom of the first, back to back to back to take the lead.
They went back to back to back.
Back to back to back. It's Roger Mason on the mound for the Giants. Marvell Wynn, Tony Gwynn, and John Kruk go back-to-back-to-back, and they lose the game 13-6. That's kind of what happened in San Diego.
Isn't it amazing, to think about, when you think about John Kruk, you think Philadelphia Phillies, that he got to start with the San Diego Padres, right?
He, yelled at Ray Kroc's wife.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
Well, how does that story go? She's like, there's somebody in the stands, and she's like, that's okay, Johnny.
Yeah.
And he thinks he's getting heckled.
Yes.
So he's like, shut up, lady.
Yeah.
Rah. And Tony Gwynn grabs him and pulls him down and says, dude, that's the owner's wife.
It's only John Kruk could do, and he had no idea what he was doing either.
That's so good. The guy who owns the record for the most opening day starts in history is Tom Seaver. And you and I were talking about this before we started. That's never going to – no one's getting to 16 opening day starts ever again.
I don't know if you'll see a starting pitcher in the last 4 or 5 years that'll play long enough. Maybe a guy like Justin Verlander. But you have to be so good. And this day and age now where it used to be a ritual, like that was a badge of honor to be the opening day starter. If you had a little bit of an injury, you would baby yourself early on. But if you were going to be that guy, opening day, that was your badge. You wanted to be the opening day starter. I'm with you. That record will never be broken.
16 of them.
Can you imagine?
It's amazing. Yeah. There are a couple of things that are current in our sport that are worth watching on opening day coming up on the 27th. And when we take a break and come back, we're going to talk about this guy, Tyler O'Neill, who's got an impressive opening day streak of his own, Seaver-esque, as we continue this opening day edition of the MLB Network Podcast. All right, welcome back to the MLB Network Podcast. This episode is presented by New Balance. We Got Now. And it's time for We Got Now, presented by New Balance. Dan, Tyler O'Neill has homered in 5 straight opening day games. That's a major league record. He opens the 2025 season on the road in his home country of Canada. Do you think the streak is on his mind right now?
Oh, Matt, no question about it. Look, when you know you've got the record, right? Todd Hundley, Gary Carter, Yogi Berra, coincidentally, all 3 catchers. No doubt. When you've done it 4 times and you're the record holder, you want to go down in the history books to be able to tell your grandkids and your family down the road, like, hey, I was pretty good on opening day. He'd like to get number 6, no question about it.
So we talked to him on Hot Stove during the season, and he said entering the 2024 opener, it was very much on his mind because one more homer and he would get the record by himself, which we just saw. The weird part about this is, you hear from power hitters that say homers come when you're not looking for them. He's looking for it on Thursday.
Oh, and especially native Canadian opening up at the Rogers Center in Toronto. There's nothing he'd like more than to get number 6, extend that lead, and do it in Canada. There's no doubt in my mind he's thinking about it.
2 for 8 with 3 strikeouts in his career against Jose Barrios, who he faces on opening day. Is there a little extra video being watched of Jose Barrios?
Yeah.
Like, is he going to be on this hard?
I think he certainly has the book on Barrios and will get the info. And I would bet you my life he's going through an at-bat right now thinking, okay, he's got that big breaking ball. He'll throw that 2-seamer in. He's used his changeup a little bit more. I'm going to look in one area, particularly the first at-bat. Now, that game plan all changes if you get in the 7th, 8th, or 9th inning, runner in scoring position.
Yeah.
You're looking to put the ball in play. But I would assume the first at-bat, he's looking for something, Matt, that he can hit the seats.
So the other side of this is interesting, and you can speak to this from first-person experience. You're the pitcher, and you're facing a guy who you know is chasing something, whether it's some esoteric record like most consecutive opening days with a homer or a 3,000th hit or something like that. Did you ever have an experience where you knew a guy was looking for something because it was a milestone and you didn't want to be the guy?
I just know this. And when Barry Bonds was going through all those chases, some pitchers are like, hey, I don't mind being that guy to give up that home run to break a record. I didn't want to be that guy. I didn't want to be that guy because you know that you're going to be on reels forever for that record breaker. And I'm sure right now that everybody in the Blue Jays and Jose Barrios, this day and age where you have stats on everything, all kinds of data, he's fully aware that he's homered 5 opening days in a row.
You know what would suck? 4 wide ones.
Oh, right. He walks his first at bat, second at bat. There's a runner on second, 2 outs. Guy struggling, hitting behind him. Better matchup. 4 fingers, yeah.
That would stink.
Yeah, that would be a rough one.
The worst part about it. We've covered a lot today, and I think the theme for this has been cold weather home openers and opening days in general. And I don't know, as a fan watching on TV, I'd feel differently if I was going to the game. But I love watching the cold weather games, man. Like 72 and mild in Anaheim and Dodger Stadium, that's great. But when you're watching on TV, the experience that we showed people of Exhibition Stadium when there's snow on the field, or when it snows in Denver on an opening day, or what we went through in Milwaukee, that's so much fun.
Listen, I had 18 of them, and I agree with you. And I know that's probably really a crazy way to look at it. There's something crazy about you open the season and it's cold, and I'm going to give some information for all you pitchers out there. Embrace the freeze. You can make a lot of hay and get off to a good start if you play in the Midwest and on the East Coast. The last thing you want to do is stand in the batter's box. You don't want to hit one off the end of the bat. You don't want to get jammed. It's a terrible thing. You're standing there, all of a sudden you walk in the batter's box. You could get off to a good start. Embrace the freeze. Take off the parkas if you're a reliever about the 6th inning. Take off the gloves. Get acclimated to the cold weather. That way, when the phone rings and you take that thing off, you're like, oh my gosh, this is brutal here. Embrace the freeze.
Also, if you're a starting pitcher, don't fall in love with the timings that they hand you on the piece of paper, because as we know, some of those ceremonies can get a little long.
Ask Garrett Cole. Remember that one?
That's right. Billy Crystal. Mr. Saturday Night, beat it.
Yeah.
I got to get on the mound.
And that's one of the things that makes opening day. There's the festivities and things go over. You have the national anthem. You have introductions, ceremonial first pitch. It says 105 start. It's not going to be 105.
We love it. We love all of it. We love doing the MLB Network podcast. You can catch us all season long, Sundays at 11:30 on MLB Network, and then redistributed wherever you find your podcasts. For Dan Plesac, Matt Vasgersian, enjoy opening day. And thanks for watching the MLB Network podcast presented by New Balance.